Welcome to Spanish class. All right, and this is, let's see if I can remember from this morning. Ernesto. Yes.
Right.
And finally, Caroline. I'm Brett. I'm here to talk about CI with thematic units. And so let's just show of hands who's in a situation where they have to teach thematic units. Oh my gosh, the world is changing. Okay, well, I like giving this talk. I just started giving this talk because I think most, like I would say, close to 100%, almost at least 90% of all language teachers are in situations where they have to, deliver thematic units. And a lot of people like myself have to give a common assessment at the end of those thematic units, or at least at the end of the semester or year. So a lot of people have a hard time transitioning to comprehensible input in that situation, because a lot of forms of comprehensible input are tough to fit in and match with thematic units. It's tough to cover, like those vocab lists of clothings and colors and restaurant vocab, all that kind of stuff. But, in an effort to try to invite more and more folks into the comprehensible input fold and to improve their students' acquisition, I think it's really important to talk about how you can use comprehensible input to cover thematic units. So, where do y'all want to get started?
Don't know what you don't know until you find out you don't know.
All right, I'll tell you my experience. I came into CI with the Invisibles. That was like targeted stories first, like trip scripts and onomatopoeia scripts, and just like 3 or 4 targets that I wanted to talk about. So I did that for like a semester. It was all right. Then I found out about Vinslava's Invisibles. Did that for a semester. That was really awesome. I do a lot of that still. But, like my best story ever, here, I'll just to break the ice and get y'all laughing. My best story ever, I think, was about a toilet paper roll. Where is it? It's been deleted from my web page. Okay, here we go. So it was a toilet paper named Teddy. This is one of my artists in class who drew this up. She's fantastically talented. So here's a toilet paper roll, and the first part of the story talks about the family that lives in the house. So that's kind of around the house vocabulary, rooms, objects, but only a little bit. It's a little bit of family, but not really in any depth. It's a little bit of personal description. Then they go to a restaurant. The premise of the story is that the family goes to Taco Tuesday, and the toilet paper roll is terrified.
Oh, dear.
So it's a little bit of going out to restaurants. It's a little bit of the food thematic vocabulary. But I would never say that any of that stuff would go, none of my students after this story would be able to take a thematic unit common assessment on any of those. Because stories naturally weave in and out through all different kinds of vocabulary lexicons. Then I went to Express Fluency training with Tina in Vermont last year, and she did this non-targeted comprehensible input, which she's modeling in the Calc track, which I was like, oh, this is really cool. So this year I experimented with all different kinds of strategies that you can talk about anything, like nonfiction stuff about students' interests, kind of like card talk where you're talking about what they bring to the table. But you can do that with thematic units. So I'll just write a quick list of the strategies that I think you can use with nonfiction with students, just to have classroom conversation. What do y'all think? What CI strategies would you use to talk about real life?
Using cultural locations or happenings in stories.
So stories with focus.
Sort of, yeah, with something from the real world happening. in the story.
Okay.
What was the question?
Okay, I'll just tell y'all what that I use. I use like student interviews. Or, you know, like persona especial, special person or special chair. A lot of people have different names for this kind of activity. Student interview. The whole point is you're just talking to students. Anything else? Like, I think movie talk.
Like picture talk.
Yeah, movie talk, picture talk, or gallery walks, or whatever you want to say, you know, with an image. Okay, I do something that I do something all the time, like probably at least 50% of my classes, which is a question of the day. And I'll talk more about, like, it's kind of obvious, but I'll talk about what that looks like. Let's see. Maybe I'll think of some others as we go along. So let's take a thematic unit, like going out to a restaurant. Is that cool? Food? Which one do you all want to do?
Food.
Food.
Because
Okay.
I find that to be very difficult because you open the book and it's like 50 terms of food.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
it's just ridiculous.
Yeah. So most CI folks would be like, that's a stupid approach to world language education. And I'm not necessarily contesting that. I mean, I think certainly centering around a vocab list is probably not the best idea. But you can do really high quality comprehensible input with food. So let's think about student interview possibilities. What could you talk? When I say student interview, by the way, for me it's very flexible. Like I don't know if you've seen Mike Peto's stuff or Bryce Hedrum's stuff about student interviews, but I think both of them have like very specific questions that they start at the beginning of the year, and then they call, you know, a few students up for like 5 questions, and then like the next week they would go on to new students and new questions. It's very prescriptive. That's fine. That's cool. My take on it is much more flexible. So like if we're talking about food, I might just see who like wants to volunteer and be like, hey, who went to a restaurant this weekend? And somebody raised their hand. I'll just be like, okay. And then so we'll have a conversation about you and the restaurant that you went to, or your favorite food, or something like that. So student interviews with food. I might do something like, yeah, favorite restaurant. Can you think of some other possibilities that you might be able to talk to students with in an interview format?
Favorite movie?
Specifically with food.
Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. I came in late.
That's all right, Jason. No worries.
What do you know how to cook?
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And what's in it?
Your favorite food from your culture.
Ooh. So favorite food.
What about
And
a
then
food
we could
thing?
be like, we could even divide that like from your culture, from your family, like specifically to like, you know, what's popular in your family recipes and stuff. For holidays, at the beach, or like different categories, or whatever.
But now, so they don't know all this. They don't know how to say these things in the target language. So what happens next?
Let's do it. Who doesn't speak Spanish? And who also feels comfortable coming up front? I saw her hand first. Come on up.
Okay, fine.
Who are you? Let's give a round of applause.
Yay!
Welcome, I'm Brett.
I'm Jerry.
Jerry. Would you like to have a seat there, or would you like a more comfortable chair? Would you like? Okay. All right, cool. So, at least the way I do comprehensible input is that from the student's perspective, we always enter conversations that they don't know the vocabulary for. In fact, that's the point of the conversation, is to expand their vocabulary. So, who doesn't speak Spanish? Okay, so 1, 2, 3. So y'all gonna be class for the next couple minutes. You know what? This might not work because like I don't have question word set up or something like that. Jerry.
We know enough.
I
We
have
know a
a
little bit.
We know enough.
do that. Yeah.
Maybe
I
I can
was
just
there yesterday.
maybe I can just write a few question words up. Okay.
She has watched 60 German Spanish videos.
No, I haven't watched any videos, but I was there yesterday. Trying to understand.
Jerry, would you mind sliding to your right like 3 feet or so? All right. So what other? I'm just gonna do like very bare bones.
¿Cuánto cuesta? ¿Cuánto está? Something like that. There is one of those.
¿Cuándo?
I don't know. Not sure. See, I say it all wrong and they understand me anyway.
Okay, we'll just do like a very basic thing. All of my students, you know, are going to see this on the day one, and you know, even if this is the first week, they're going to have some prior knowledge. But y'all have some prior knowledge just from conversation. So, Jerry, hola, clase, diga hola, Jerry, and tres. Uno, dos, tres.
Hola.
Jerry. Okay, Jerry. In Espanol, food es comida. Comer is the verb. Comida is when I point at the food. Okay, es comida. Do you have questions for her? I let my students ask the questions. It's like it just works better, like because they're directing the conversation.
¿A dónde te gusta comer?
Did you understand that?
Yep.
Okay, so ¿dónde te gusta comer? Or ¿a cuál restaurante?
Te
Oh.
gusta?
Restaurante.
Oh, no te gusta.
Oh.
Mi casa.
Fantástico. Okay, clase. Jerry dijo que ella prefiere comer a su casa. Ella también dijo, también means also. Ella también dijo que no le gustan los restaurantes. No le gustan. Pero Jerry, ¿qué restaurante es número uno?
Ole,
No.
ole.
Ole Ole. Oh, de Portland. Oh, fantástico. Okay, Ole. So, the other thing that I think is really important is to do this. So, I need more space on my I'm not gonna raise them. Yeah, great. Jerry. Ella se llama Jerry. Oh. Okay. Jerry prefiere la comida a su casa. No le gustan los restaurantes, pero el restaurante favorito de Jerry es Ole Ole en Portland. Muy bien. Otra pregunta. Do you have another question? Non-Spanish speakers. Do you have another question?
¿Dónde es tu casa?
Oh, muy bien. Gracias.
Mi casa es Nuevo York.
Oh, okay. So, N. Uh-huh.
N?
Jerry, tu casa no está en Portland?
No, está en
Okay, no está en Portland, está en
Nueva York.
Nueva York. Fantástico. Okay. Una pausa para Jerry.
Yay!
Okay, so they what vocab words did you pick up? Like, y'all have some Spanish, but did you hear some stuff?
I think I kind of knew all those words
Okay.
already.
Yeah, we
Okay.
made sense.
Yeah, awesome. That's an example of a student interview. Sometimes it doesn't have to be like that formal. It could just be like personalized question asking to the class. We might talk about Jerry in her seat for a couple minutes, and then we might move on to other students. Jerry.
I mean, I'm just trying to think of ways to open up the vocabulary. If you allowed questions in English, for instance, if I said, what do you eat with when you go to the restaurant? Like one of us, like a class person.
Right.
And then they don't have that vocabulary.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like how I want to introduce it, how you eat with and what you eat with. But
You as a teacher or a student drives that question?
as a teacher, I'm thinking
You want to get that in.
around to what you eat with.
Yeah.
I'm targeting vocabulary, but I do want to bring.
Yeah, if you had that goal, I don't think a student interview would be the time to do that. You could just like do that via picture talk or movie talk, or maybe like a nonfiction, like one of Tina's like visual scaffolding things. You could draw like a table setting and just talk to your students. You know, so that's a good. What does Tina call that? It's like
Input chart or something like that.
yeah, input chart. But the general category I think she calls like nonfiction storytelling or story listening.
Visual lectures.
Visual lectures, isn't that it?
Yeah.
All right, so visual lectures. Yeah, so anything where you're like I would do it in Spanish. I could just do it right now. Clase, hola. Durante, bueno, a la casa, tú pones un plato y una servilleta y un cuchillo y es un tenedor grande. Este es plato. You could like do the whole thing just with visual lectures if you wanted to. So that's another good option as well. And I think you could achieve that same type of thing with a picture talk. Maybe not a movie talk.
You could also say like, oh, did you have pizza last night? Did you eat with your hands? I eat pizza with my hands,
Yeah.
but my mom eats pizza with a fork. She's fancy.
Yeah.
She's just, you know.
Yeah, or you can even like it could get interesting there with like, what do you prefer to eat with your hands or with fork and knife, or like what foods do you most enjoy eating with your hands?
Do you eat more frequently with a fork or with a spoon?
Yeah, yeah,
Do you eat cereal with a fork?
Yeah.
Oh, that's weird.
yeah. So all
Things
this
like
is
that.
another option. It's just personalized question
Yeah.
asking about a topic. Yeah. This stuff right here is I don't know if there's do y'all know a word for this technique? I just call it visual scaffolding. I don't have like a cool way to talk about it, but it does not matter what I'm doing in class, whatever format of comprehensive info, whether we're like making up a story or doing a question of the day or a movie talk, whatever I do, I'm like constantly doing this. And then I would do a write and discuss using these things to provide like the scaffolding that the students would need. So let's just quickly do that as a model of a write and discuss with my class of Spanish newbies. Okay, so really quickly, we're just going to write that conversation. We're going to move it from floating in the air, just an oral conversation, the four of us, to visual, to textual. So, can you all just pick some information that you see here and tell me in Spanish what the sentence was, or however much of the sentence you can do?
Ellas se llamo Jerry.
Sí. Uh-huh. So, maybe I'll say,
Yes.
So,
I
estudiante,
Chica.
una chica, okay, una chica especial en clase se llama Jerry. Okay, and I use this, I literally like check that off and move on to another piece of information.
So you're not using like words to be like, look back at the words. You're just being like, look at this picture, or weird, like, almost like a mind map.
It's like a mind map, yeah. It's just notes. A lot of times, it's words. It's also like organizational features and and spatial features. It's just a combination of words and images, but it's not a whole lot of syntactical structure. I leave that up to the students to give back to me to whatever ability they have. I don't know why. It's just quicker as well.
CI mind map. Trademark it for now.
CI mind map. There you go. But we got more to cover here, y'all. Class.
Ella viva en Nueva York.
Okay.
I'm just guessing.
Great job. Ella
You
vive en
can tell Papa.
Nueva. Yeah, right. I will.
Should watch one video.
Nueva York. Pero that means but, not that one. The other one. Pero. Can you? Are you with me? I'm doing contrast. What's the next sentence then?
Ella no vive en Oregon.
Close, but that doesn't explain the pero. Pero.
Pero no le
Ah.
gusta. No le gusta
El gusta
comer. Sí, pero no
Pero
le gusta.
ole
es
es-
los.
Ah, there it is.
Oh,
Hey.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, pero su restaurante favorito,
Se
sí.
llama ole ole.
Bueno, but su restaurante favorito no está en Nueva York. ¿Dónde está? Sí. Ole está en Portland. Okay, so
Okay, yeah.
right, we talked about a couple other things, and I would make sure to have them up here. And then the write and discuss would be longer. So this is a technique that I use with all of these formats. So it's super important in my practice.
My kids would love checking off the things. They would feel
You
so
could even-
good.
you-
They would
you
feel
saying
so
that, just those
much
couple of
power
words.
as you just checked off everything you just did.
Something about the way that you started that sentence made me think you could like call them up, like the student who provided the sentence. You could have them come up and check it off if you wanted to.
You got a marker.
Is that where you were going with it, or you just thought it'd be cool
No, I
to
was
check it
just
off?
thinking there's such a feeling of satisfaction. So that the whole list thing, there's an adrenaline rush when you check something.
Yeah.
Kids would feel that. They would feel
Yeah.
the power of
Yeah.
taking it off one at a time.
And it helps organize it. It's, you know what I mean? Like the logical structure of whatever text you're creating. And also, I teach high school, sometimes they just don't bring it. So I'll just be like, I mean, it's obvious that I'm saying you haven't done that part, so do it. And I also, like, I encourage risk taking. So, like, I just say, I don't even care if you get through the sentence, just start it. And then we as a class will jump in and help out. Can y'all think of a movie talk that you could do to satisfy this food unit? Is there anybody in here who does not know what a movie talk is? Thank you for saying so, and you as well for saying so. A movie talk is where you show a short clip from some source, and you turn the audio off, so it's just a visual input, and then you provide a narration in the target language. So, an example would be, for this, I think a funny example would be like a clip from Ratatouille. If I could get a small, clip from Ratatouille, you don't want it to be that long because you're gonna have to pause like every 5 seconds to say what's happening in the video. So if I get like a minute or maybe a minute and a half clip of Ratatouille, that'd be sweet. Y'all have any other ideas? Yes.
Have you seen Feast? I think it's called Feast.
What is
I think it's
it?
also a Pixar short clip. It's so cute. It's like you assume he's a bachelor, and he has a little puppy, and he's constantly like feeding feeding stuff to his dog, and like they eat spaghetti together and stuff. But then he gets a girlfriend, and the girlfriend eats healthy, and he gets sad because he's eating healthy now. But then they break up, and he sees that his human is sad, and then like somehow I don't know. She comes back, and then they're happy again, and he's happy with just eating healthy. It's so cute. Yes. Oh, it's so cute.
Okay.
I don't know.
I'm gonna choose one that's 53 seconds long.
Okay, I can't. It's pretty long, but if you just get
I need a volunteer. I think he's gonna beat you to it. So when I say pausa.
Pausa.
Okay. Pausa. Clase. Es una papa frita. Frita means fried. Okay, papa, potato. So, papa frita, pollo, frito, churros, fritos. So, even with the movie talk, I've rarely done movie talks. I did one this past year, I think. Even with the movie talk, I would still have this visual scaffold. How about fritas? Clase. ¿Cuáles papas fritas son tus favoritas? McDonald's, Burger Bash, Chick-fil-A.
Potato champion.
Potato Champion. ¿Es un restaurante? Potato Champion?
Es una camioneta
Oh, wow.
de papas fritas.
Oh, wow. Clase, camioneta. Don't say it in English. Do you know it or not? Camioneta. Okay, camioneta. Es una camioneta de comida, de papas fritas. ¿Cómo se llama?
Potato champion. Y los papas fritas son de la Belgique.
Son. I don't know if y'all understand. Let me know if you don't understand this sentence, but son en el estilo de Bélgica.
Sí.
Bélgica, Francia, Bélgica,
Sí.
Francia, en Europa, Bélgica. Oh, wow. ¿Cómo te llamas?
Andrea. Andrea.
André. Okay. André. Andrea. Fantástico. Continúa. ¡Pausa! Es un perro. Oh. Reacciona. Oh. Es un perro. Wow.
Negra y blanco.
Bueno, ¿es negro o es gris o es azul? Yo no sé. Y blanco, claro. Anyway, I could go on and on. That's movie talk. So you just have like a movie as your source for driving the conversation forward. And I would do exactly this way. I would pause it like as soon as there's something interesting and probably talk for like 3 or 4, 5, 10 minutes. Like this might take a whole class. In fact, there's a dog. Like I would have this whole conversation about dogs and pets and animals and what you prefer, and like we'd probably Google search for other cute dogs and like what style of dog is the favorite of people. It would turn into a question of the day. Like just the presence of the dog. We would just come back to the movie talk later. I mean, it wouldn't be about food, unfortunately. Maybe if I were a better teacher, like I wouldn't talk about dogs during the food. Yeah. So okay, so scratch all that. If I were actually doing this, I'd probably focus on the food. Maybe the
What
dogs.
food does your dog eat?
They
Oh,
want
yeah.
to watch it in English when you're done. They desperately want to watch it. Can we watch it? We want to watch it. Let us watch it.
I mean, it's like a personal teacher decision. Do whatever you want. Like I said, I don't actually do a lot of movie talks, but I think that you can do whatever you want in that situation. If you do movie talks, you need to know that your kids are gonna like yell at you every time you pause.
Yes.
And I'd just be like, "This is class, y'all. Go watch the video at home." Is what I would say. And,
I found it.
So, or at the top. Yeah. So just know that they're like, it's a great activity, but they're gonna complain unless you preview the fact that this is a learning situation and you don't care if they complain.
You can also
All right.
you can also take screenshots of the movie and just show the screenshots, although they will be like, I thought you said this was a video. And you're like, I told you at the beginning.
Round of applause for. Ernesto, lo siento. All right. Let's keep going. What's maybe one more idea of the movie talk for food stuff?
Like an advertisement? Would that work?
Be specific.
Yes. Grocery stores. I know. Oh, that's a good one. Yeah,
Grocery store, like a
Think
grocery
students
store.
though.
Publix. Oh.
Well, there are some amazing French commercials for their grocery store commercials are like mini
Okay.
romance
Yeah,
movies.
bring it in.
And the kids love them.
Bring it into culture. That'd be
Yeah.
a great idea.
And then I leave the punchline, I don't play it, then I go back to the beginning and play the whole thing, and then they get to see, and they think it's hilarious because they're like, oh, they fell in love because of the groceries. Sure.
That's my attempt at a second star.
What? Oh.
Okay, so bravo, you brought culture in to your movie talk. Okay, can y'all think of some picture talks that would be interesting?
School lunches are easy.
Yeah.
Pictures of school lunches from different
Like a terrible school lunch or
Oh,
something.
okay. The American school lunch.
Public service. PSAs for school lunches.
Yeah.
Okay, another option?
There's a series of pictures about what people eat around the world.
Yes.
Oh,
That's
yeah,
really,
it's
really
more
interesting.
culture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so like a
Careful,
global.
those are posed. I looked up more information
what?
about those, and those are done by like a nutrition company.
Really?
What?
Yeah. There's like a series
That's a
that all
shame.
looks like
That
in the
makes
same
sense.
style,
Hey.
but someone else's like background. This was put up together.
You get the culture orange. Okay.
Orange.
Hey, Ben.
Yes.
You could do a comparison. Target language, school lunch.
I definitely did it. So I pulled up a picture of an American lunch quote and then a Peruvian lunch, I think. And they were like, that looks incredible. Or in Spain as well. And they just like went off, and then you got to throw in like, there were like in a Central American lunch there was an arepa in it, and they didn't know what an arepa is. So it's like a corn cake. And I got to talk about that for a little while, and like it just depends on what's in it. But yeah, that's easy. Also, like, and I brought in like saludable. Is it healthy? Like, is it this? Like, what is more healthy? Is there more fat in this? Is there blah, blah, like, so you can make it go the nutrition route, or also just straight up like, what is this? Which is better? Like, why?
Yeah.
How's the food in the cafeteria? What's your favorite day in the cafeteria? What food do they serve on that day? Like, blah blah blah.
Absolutely. And this just jumped into my mind because in almost every country except for the United States that I know of, they give kids at school real silverware. So you could actually bring in your silverware content via a picture talk comparison of school lunches, if that interested you. I mean, it might just come up anyway. That's the whole point. Like, that's the whole point I'm trying to make, and I think that it needs to be like the biggest message added to our current CI landscape of training, that like you can have stuff come up naturally in a very engaging way, in a very student-driven way, about thematic units, and it still be really interesting. Like these conversations would be. All right, question of the day. I'll give you a couple examples. We can do French fries. So I could just like, I could probably lead a conversation for 30 minutes with high school students about what their favorite French fries are. You know, and so that could be the question of the day. In that situation, it's not one student who is the focus, like Jerry was. It's one question, French fries, and I would push to get a variety of different perspectives. And you know, I would make sure in doing this kind of visual scaffolding, I would put the name of the person who made some statement, like Chick-fil-A. Or maybe I would organize it like that, like a chart. Chick-fil-A, how many students think Chick-fil-A is the best fries? Maybe there's somebody who is like, you know, on some like low carb diet. We could talk about that. You know, if they said, no, I don't even like if I don't even like French fries, that'd be a shocking thing. You know, that'd be important to talk about. So, what are some other questions of the day that you think would be interesting to talk about with food? Or thinking about the conversations that we've had, like if you were moving through a unit, what kinds of questions haven't been asked that you think would be interesting?
What foods you don't like?
Ah, got it. So the opposite of favorite food.
Do you think you could eat vegan or vegetarian?
Ooh.
I'm vegan,
See,
that comes up a lot.
that starts to, like, this is a very basic kind of conversation, but when you start to talk about preferences, not just with food, but in like conscious decisions. Are you vegetarian? Are you vegan? What are those things about? All of a sudden, that becomes like an AP theme, global perspectives. I'm not an AP teacher. Is that one of them? Global communities?
Global challenges.
Global challenges. Or what AP theme would that fit into best? Vegetarian lifestyles? Is that an AP theme?
Maybe, I don't know. I don't teach it.
Recycling.
Personal and public identity.
Yeah,
Ooh,
yeah.
there
Personal
you
public
go.
identity is what it would be, I think. Most. Not that they can't be more than one category. But you can see how you could have that conversation, you know, with like an AP class, or anything between level 1 and AP, because when the students drive your curriculum like that, and your content like that, you just match the language to their ability possible with it. So, least favorite. So,
Food
what do you
waste.
call it? Food based.
Food waste.
Oh, let me get the vegetarian thing.
Oh, yeah.
Vegetarian, gluten, that's not really a choice for most people. What's the other one? Vegan. What are some other
Halals.
Oh, halal. Oh, yeah, that's really interesting.
Halal and kosher.
Right, kosher. Anyway, you can talk about that for a week. Food waste.
I would say food waste and composting and recycling.
I don't think that's a question of the day. What would that be?
Do you waste?
How much food do you throw away? What foods get thrown away?
What do you
at
throw
home?
away that your parents don't know about? What should we do with the roast leftover veggies?
I guess it could be a question of the day. Yeah.
Maybe that's an adult question, but like, what foods you
What
throw
do you
away the
trade
most?
with others?
So
Okay,
it's
yeah,
different.
yeah.
So I was like,
Yeah.
I got too ambitious with it.
At our school.
How do you wish we could change the school lunch?
Yeah, stuff like that. Yeah, that'd be good. That's plenty for questions of the day. All
But
right.
I had a question. I had a thought about that.
Yeah.
I was wondering if, for a question of the day, if like, say you're doing a bunch of non-targeted stuff and did a bunch of stories and we're like having a lovely time, and then you're like, okay, maybe we got to hit on the thematic unit before we go into this common assessment or whatever. Do you think that you could maybe like a week in advance or like on the Friday before the Monday be like, hey guys, like, remember how we do question of the day? Well, we're going to start on this like unit about food next week, and I was wondering if you had any specific questions about food, like food related, and give some examples, kind of like we've given now, and then have them just like for 3 minutes just write as many questions as they could think of that would be interesting to talk about.
It's one of my goals for next year.
Because this is my teaching journal from this year, and like more than once I've written survey students about what they want to learn that unit, and I can tell you that did not happen this year, but is something I'm interested in.
I think that this is ripe for opportunity here. Where if you know you're going into a unit on food, then yeah, I have it down as one of my goals for this next year is to come up with some kind of basic survey that asks questions like these to see if something jumps out. You know, like for example, I had a student in class who goes to the tech center. His name is Darius. He goes to the tech center at my county for the pastry program. So every other day he spends 4.5 hours as a chef studying. And I knew this before. Well, and that was level 2. We didn't have a food unit, but he was definitely like a student interview when I found that out. I called him up, and you know, it was great. I learned about his pastry passion and his studies and stuff. So that's the kind of stuff that I hope to mine with brainstorming. In addition to like, you know, the trivial stuff, Chick-fil-A is my favorite, or you know, whatever. But maybe, I don't know, maybe like I just found out that one of my students from like not this past year, but 2 years ago, his father owns a Japanese restaurant really close to school. Just because my wife and I went on a date and he was our waiter, you know. So like that would have been cool to talk about. Like his dad is Japanese American, and makes all kinds of Japanese food in Chesterfield County outside of Richmond. That would have been great for a food unit if I had done some surveying. Absolutely.
And I think that, I mean, I teach middle school and they need a lot of modeling of life skills. But like one of them, like, is inquiry is one of the big things in like, because I think in the beginning, yeah, you would get a lot of like, I'm just thinking like we did a clothing unit. It's like, what's your favorite Gucci belt? You know, like it would probably like the questions can get pretty surface. But I think modeling also, like maybe giving them a chance to like get those questions out of their brains, and then being like, okay, now think about it as relation as we're learning Spanish, and there's people in all parts of the world, and we talked about people learning Spanish, and you're like, no, whatever. Like, do you have questions about how people eat in other countries? Like, here's a model question: what do people eat for lunch in so and so? And then have them, you know, do deeper thinking. I don't know. What I'm trying to say is like get more inquiry-based questions that are culture adjacent at the very least.
I think if you give them the opportunity to, those kids, even middle school kids, even elementary school kids, I think they would step into that and start thinking, like, what am I curious about?
Yeah, and that's what I guess that's what I'm trying to say is I think they need a lot of modeling because it is easy to stay in like fun town and have long debates about French fries and stuff like that. But there's also opportunity for them to step up to that plate too.
Yeah.
So that's what I think I'm going for.
I agree with that whole fun town thing. Like
that was a question that was actually a comment. I hate myself. I'm sorry.
No, it was good. No, it was really good, especially with this, and you're pushing at CI. I think that CI to a lot of non-CI practitioners comes off as juvenile and silly, and certainly there are aspects of CI that can be and are juvenile and silly, but it doesn't have to be. Like, you know, like comparing American school lunches to French school lunches or Spanish school lunches. That's awesome. That's like a deep conversation that you could have at any level. Your idea of providing like a gallery or just a series of slideshow images with interesting foods around the world, I mean, it's a really deep concept. So that's an important thing. You could do like you could purposely ask, what is your favorite foreign cuisine food? Talk about that in a way that promotes, you know, the aspect of world language instruction, which is openness to global mindedness.
I just had a question. Assuming you have to stick to a theme, then you have like a test or some sort of assessment that you're giving, do you typically just do kind of like targeted CI to like recycle the vocab and like the things that you're trying to get them to learn, or do you combine this with other teaching methods in your class, or how do you go about the day-to-day?
I think that's going to have to be. I don't feel comfortable answering that for anybody because everybody's personal situation is different. You know, maybe you have a really strict district that has, like, every unit has a common assessment. So that would be a very difficult, especially with perhaps you have a principal that's getting pressured by parents who, like, so he's or she's really on your case to deliver specific vocab. Like, that's a far cry away from a county that only has a common final with a principal that loves what you're doing because he doesn't get any complaints or she doesn't get any complaints. You know what I'm saying? So, you know, you have to figure that out for yourself, I would say. I would push back on saying that this is targeted comprehensible input Because in these conversations, it's not like I have 2 or 3 structures in mind. All of this is non-targeted CI. Even though you're like talking about specific things, even though you're talking about, you know, a specific vocabulary lexicon, it's non-targeted CI because I didn't go into the class thinking like, okay, today we're gonna work with wants, goes, and eats to talk about like what kind of food you want today, where you're gonna go, like what restaurants or what friend's house, and when you're gonna eat there. That would be an example of a targeted lesson plan. You could do any of the above. You could do, you know, all non-targeted stuff, and then move on. Design your own assessment if you have that ability, or if you have, like, it depends on your common assessment for that unit, I would say. Like, if you can get your kids to succeed on the common assessment using research-based world language acquisition strategies, then I would say, hey, you should do that. If there are, like, questions on the common assessment that you don't think are going to come up, or you're 2/3 of the way through the unit and they haven't come up, maybe you need to direct the class specifically to those, you know, concepts so that they can succeed on the test. Yes?
I don't think this is fair either, but do you have I teach 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th. And it's new.
Woo!
Yeah, it's new. So in my mind, I know you sort of recycle, you know, words, but say I wanted to do food at some point with everybody. Is there a time, you know what I mean? Like in your mind, do you think, we'll just camp out on here for 2 weeks and none of it's targeted, but we'll just camp out here on food for 2 weeks and we'll just do all that? I mean, do you have sort of in your head, you know, like, no, a week is enough, everybody's bored after a week, or, do you know what I mean? Like if you're doing thematic, if you're trying to do something sort of thematic, do you, I mean, I've heard some people say, no, it's the whole month of December, or it's a whole, I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a feel for?
Well, I put this talk together because I think there are a lot of people out there like me who are being told like what their curriculum is. You know, so I don't have a choice. I have to, like in Spanish 1, I've got 7 vocabulary lexicons that, you know, it's like personal descriptions, then it's like family, and then it's like activities that you like to do, and then it's like family, I already said family, then it's going out to a restaurant. You know what I mean?
I know, I've got the same ones, yep.
So if you're designing your own curriculum, like if you're open-ended, I don't know if anybody's really answered that question about what's most, you know,
for
what's
instance,
most
what you do in your classes. Okay, let's say I have the same thing. I sort of do exact same thing.
Okay.
But I did it differently last year, but I always, you know, it was my first year last year, I was always afraid, quote unquote, that they wouldn't get enough of the right vocabulary.
Mm-hmm.
Even though this was working and they were growing and learning and everything, I panicked in about December.
Oh yeah.
I mean, I went full on, you know, September to December, and then I just panicked because I thought, oh my gosh, I've got all these levels, and this one has to feed into this, and this one has to feed into that, and they've all got to take these big tests at the end of the year, and I know what vocabulary is on those tests, and they don't know it. You know what I mean? And then you end up sort of teaching to the test because you absolutely know they have to know this. I don't know. I'm going in fresh in September, but I'm not sure how much pressure to put on myself that the 2s have to know, you know what I mean? The 1s have to feed in the 2s, which have to feed in the 3s, and know all the food, you know, then they need to be food experts by the time they're seniors.
Right. Do you have unit assessments? Or is it just a semester and final? Or is it just a final?
I do, I can choose.
But what are you required to do? What are you mandated?
Well, it's what the rest of you know, it's what the Spanish teachers are doing. You know, that's the thing. I can't be too out there. I have to.
Okay, so it sounds like you have some liberty
I
to
have
choose
some
your own
liberty,
path.
definitely.
Yeah.
And my own head is what constrains me.
I would not panic then this year.
I'll write that down.
Yeah, I would not panic. I mean, one thing I would do is keep writing portfolios of your students. So, like, if you're designing your curriculum, it sounds like you can choose what you want to do. If you design to do thematic units, if that makes you feel more comfortable with fitting in with your department, if that's what they're doing. That's kind of why I'm designing this talk. Like, there's a lot of, like my department, there's a lot of departments out there who are, almost all of world language instruction is thematic based right now, organized thematic, by thematic units. I would, if I were you, it sounds like, I feel a little uncomfortable giving you specific advice like that, but I would teach thematic units since other people are doing that in this style. I would do a fair share of like fun stuff too, like invisible style stories and one-word images and stuff. And I would on a regular basis, like maybe at the end of each thematic unit, I would make sure I keep writing samples that use that vocabulary. Like maybe I give the prompts like write everything you want about food, make it 200 words. Here's 30 minutes or whatever. And you can give them prompts about like what their favorite restaurants are, what they ate last weekend, what they want to eat in the future, anything that you talk about within that thematic unit, and then keep those samples, because when it comes down to it, the proof is in the pudding, and CI provides fantastic writing samples. I mean, amazing. Anything is so much better than what I was able to do with my students before. Jason?
Yeah, one thing that helped me in regards to themes, if I kept my themes in mind and used those as my targets. Just because I'm working on a food theme doesn't mean other ones won't come up. So if working with pictures of families eating around the world, that's family plus food plus description plus all these things. Geography, and you can really integrate all of these into one quote-unquote theme. So what I found was, as long as I kept maybe five specific themes in mind at all times, and always trying to build connections between two of them, they got what they needed by the end. It was just natural overlap. That was one thing that really helped me, was just because I'm working on food doesn't mean it's only food. There's a lot of richness within that topic that's relevant to other ones as well.
I think that point
Yeah,
applies
like I
to...
said, I love being relaxed in what you're talking about because it's all comprehensive input. Like I said, my limitation is right here. It's just right here.
And that's what I'm wondering. It looks like with this this list of activities, and there are more that you could expand on as we like PLC essentially and discover more. But like even with this, like if you're hitting food hard for a week and you're like, okay, they're starting to get some of that vocab, I can see it sticking. But then they're like starting to give you like zombie face. Then you could be like, okay, maybe we take a week and go on a wild story adventure and just like go off into crazy town for a minute and then bring it back, but at a different angle with one of these other ones. So maybe you were doing lots of student interviews. Maybe then you come back with a movie talk and be like, oh, hey, we're back to food a little bit. Or if you also know, like, if you have the choice to do a semester versus a final, like if that you only have to do the semester and then the final, then you might just be like, okay, during the first semester, we'll do a week of food, and then we'll go to La La Land, and then we'll do a week of family, and then we'll go back to food if we feel like it, and then it sounds like you have a little bit more liberty to recycle and link those themes up. I was also thinking, at least for my students next year, for like question of the day and expansion of that, to kind of drive in just memorized phrases that for lower levels are easy, is like, finish this sentence, mis comidas favoritas son blank, blank, y blank. And then just having them fill in the blanks. And then you could play a game with them, like, do like mysterious person with them essentially, like, mis comidas favoritas son chocolate, queso, y blank, tacos. ¿Quién es? Like, who is it? And then they are hearing over and over again, mis comidas favoritas son, blah, 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 hitting them with like, because that's something from ELL education, is they're like, hit them with a sentence frame. So if we can hit them with like, especially these super low levels with just repeatable sentence frames that if they need to produce on a semester exam, like they're gonna get the, oh, son tus comidas favoritas, they can just like, it out because they've heard it in class 10 to 30 times, describing different people in the class, then that will maybe stick a little bit more. I'm looking into something like that for like question of the week, like doing like a question, like doing a weekly question of like, starting it with like weekend talk, like este fin de semana, this weekend I went to drive that for me.
Yeah.
The big ones. So if you need to hit certain structures that you know will come up on the test, you can make them a very repetitive question or sentence frame that you just like drive home a million times by saying it over and over and over again, and using that as a conversation starter. Because then you can quiz someone who's like, you said chocolate and cheese, like, what? Do you eat them together? And that turns into a non-targeted conversation that you started with this form question that had a sentence stem for them to work on. So.
How about some examples? A little change of pace. Sound good? So I need to write a blog post about this so that folks like you can go on and check this stuff out. But I went back at a certain point and organized all of the textual reviews, the writing discussions for one class in particular for the whole year by theme. I didn't actually go through the year by theme, but like I went back and figured out what conversations from which days matched which theme, and it's really interesting to see what came up. So this is Spanish 1 first quarter. It's like the normal first unit: descriptions, clothing, colors, greetings, stuff. I analyzed, or not even analyzed, but I just put together questions that I think are important, kind of like guiding questions to what conversations I can have with kids. And this is what came out. So these are like actual, these are actual write and discusses, from class. That's a student secretary typed after I wrote it up on the board. So this is the first day of class. We talked about me. We talked about a dude named Corey and a girl named Haley. Just very basic things. A couple weeks in, looks like we talked about telephones. That's not a very good example. Here, Natalia came up. Birthdays, I guess, came up. So we talked about a couple people and their birthdays and their families. So we started getting into families a little bit. Isaiah was a special person this day. That's not a very good example. Here's my sister. It's like a little photo talk, a little picture talk. So this is a photo of my sister, Danny, and her husband. Let's see. The second quarter of the year was family, age, month, birthdays, basic activities. What came up? Adam was a special person. We talked about his age, his dogs. We talked about where he lives. He's part Puerto Rican. That's cool. Okay. Jahari came up. Once again, the conversation centered on his pet for some reason. We talked about Devon. All right, here's Isaiah again. Turns out that he loves shoes. So the whole conversation with Isaiah and his special day revolved around his shoe hobby. As we go on, throughout the year, things get more advanced. This is in the fourth unit, so at the end of the year, or third unit, which is school and school activities. So like sports. So we talked about the Super Bowl. We talked about badminton because we had an Indian student who just moved from India. Badminton was his favorite sport.
Yes.
Here is a show choir that our school has, which is really important to our community. They're the best in the nation, have been for like a decade or so. So this is like actual pictures of our show choir with students from class in the picture. Kalina was the subject, and Sam. Kalina is a dancer and singer for it, and Sam is a trumpeter in the show choir band called Big Cheeks. Yeah, Ryan.
Can I go off on a tangent? I just want to put a question.
Yeah. Should I scroll back up?
No, I noticed on your write and discuss when you write up, if you're talking, if you're doing like an interview with a student, you say so and so said, and then you write that in first person. So is that something you do all the time, or do you mix it up sometimes? I really like that's really good. I really like that. That's a great way to get those first person marks.
I think it's a constant concern amongst our critique of CI.
Yeah.
It gets a lot of third person, both singular and plural.
Yeah.
But students, at least my students for years, and even this year, they had a deficit when it came to the first person singular in particular, but also the first person plural. So I just decided about halfway through this year to make every write and discuss in the first person.
That's awesome.
So like in our conversation, I would say I didn't do it just because I don't know. I didn't think about it, but like I should have said Jerry said, and then I live in New York. My favorite, but my favorite restaurant is in New York. Anyway, to continue on, because, I mean, like most of the writing assessments of our students are going to be in the first person. So it looks really bad to our colleagues, you know, when our students aren't good at the first person singular in particular. So yeah, it's a
They'll
smart
say yo
observation.
tiene, like they'll say I, because they've heard tiene so many, like over
Yeah.
and over and over again.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, that's right. Pretty much. I mean, I don't want to say every, but I make a
Conscious effort
concerted,
to do
yeah,
it.
a conscious
Okay.
decision to put all. And even when I do like stories, a la Ben Slavic,
Yeah.
I write from the character's perspective. So like if we're talking about that toilet paper roll, like I did that a couple years ago and it was in the third person singular, I would rewrite that in the first person if I did it now to address that concern. How about a video?
Video.
Let me just ask a question while you're searching for it. In the first or second year, how much do you scaffold their initial writing?
0.
I mean, like, what do you expect? Just off the top of your head, what do you expect them to do? Because like I said, I jumped out of the airplane without a parachute, and then I sort of was like, oh dear, how do I make the connection? I didn't have much information in September about how to make the connection between, they understood, their listening was amazing, and they could answer, I mean, their listening comprehension, and they could read what I had written, but they didn't make the jump to writing. It was the first time I'd ever had sevens, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Just curious what you.
I drink the water. I drink the Kool-Aid, I should say. With the whole flood of input thing, I don't practice any writing ever. And this is a level 1 student. I posted this on my blog in October. It's like October 26th or October 20th is when this student did this. This is a high achieving student. But still, they've had Spanish then for a little under 2 months. So, I mean, when you estimate the inefficiencies associated with public education and a class of 25, and I had her first block, that's probably 30 hours of input.
And this
or
is
so.
pretty much, her ability to do this is based on stories, maybe, mostly?
No, it's mostly based on, my curriculum is mostly
Or this?
mostly non-targeted, non-targeted nonfiction. Like,
Okay, and the only
Thematic
way that they've
conversations.
heard the words and they've seen the words when you did write and discuss.
Yeah.
That's the only time they've quote unquote seen what you've been talking about in words.
yeah, I would say that's true for my level 1 students. In January, they started seeing independent reading, and my level 2s and 3s started independent reading at the beginning of the year. But for this student in particular, their curriculum consisted exclusively of me talking in Spanish for 2/3 of the class every day, and the final third creating a write and discuss. Depending on the timing, I would do reading strategies just to review the text quickly, like just choral translation, or maybe like some questions, or like, you know, passing it around, like taking turns translating, or maybe even like just to give me a break, just translate this paragraph while I sit down and breathe for a little while, you know. So yeah, and this is what I don't know, you can probably handle this Spanish based on what you're able to do here, but it says there's a taco name. I mean, I'm going to do it straight up.
Want me to translate?
Yeah, sure.
Taco's name is Tommy. Tommy doesn't live in somewhere.
Yeah, it's
Tommy
a
lives
neighborhood.
in there.
Another neighborhood.
Tommy is big, tall. Tommy is, I don't know, fat maybe?
Yeah.
Okay. Tommy is very interesting. He has a friend. His friend's name is Charlie.
Yeah.
Charlie is a waffle.
Cookie.
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 Okay.
Anyway, that was like
Charlie-
another story. We
yeah.
had a cookie come up or something.
Charlie is not stupid. Charlie is very, very stupid. Oh, okay. Tommy goes to the house of Charlie.
I've lost where we are. Yeah.
Bob.
Yeah. And like, I think that's enough. I think
Yeah.
like analyzing after a month and a half, this is surprisingly error-free. I mean, it's not error-free, for sure. Amigo nombre is not correct, of course. You know, but like, it's pretty good. It's like 90% correct.
I think it's amazing.
And it's not, she's a really strong student. But it's not just really strong students. Well, I mean, this is also, is that, Jaden, yeah, Jaden's a really strong student. So this took about 20 minutes or so. But I told you, I drank Kool-Aid a couple years ago, and ever since then I've not practiced any kind of speech production or written production. I just every once in a while ask them to write as much as they can for like 20 minutes or so, and I keep that throughout the year. I still have them from 3 years ago. So like if anybody really comes down to me, I'm gonna be like, can your kids do this? Let me see the proof. Mm-hmm. And this isn't like, it's not like, I just tell them to write about anything. You know, so it's not like I'm saying we spent a week on talking about restaurants, now write about restaurants. No, they're pulling stuff from like the past 2 months at this point. Right, I mean, which is more
but
impressive, I
it's
think.
Pretty much it comes out in a story form, you know, story-esque form.
The first person wrote a story. I kind of threw that out as a challenge. I remember this. I said, you could just write about yourself, or you can write about me or somebody in class. Or if you want a challenge, it's harder to create. There's cognitive dissonance when you're creating as well as trying to think in a foreign language. She chose to write a story about a taco, which is cool. This student did not write a story. They just wrote about themselves. It says, today I'm wearing a formal blue shirt. I'm wearing brown pants also. Finally, I'm wearing white shoes. I play American football for the JV team at Clover Hill. And I could go on and everything. So he just wrote about, most people wrote about themselves.
But the fact that they had the vocabulary to do that,
it's especially cool. Like I thought about, the real strength of CI, I think, is the breadth of vocabulary. This is an understated strength of non-targeted CI. That, I think the surface level reaction to comparing vocab list instruction to CI instruction is that the vocab list kind of traditional methodology covers more vocabulary. I think it's actually shockingly not the case. I think that my students under non-targeted CI probably acquired, I don't know, a shot maybe 10 times the amount of vocabulary and in crazy breadth, because it leads to all kinds of conversations. So I think the best way to celebrate CI would be when you're assigning a free write to assign certain sections of the class about certain concepts that have been covered. Like, okay, we spent some time talking about restaurants, so y'all have to write about restaurants or whatever. We spent some time talking about video games, so y'all have to, but it's the same class. And at the end of the same class, you could demonstrate comprehension in production, not just reception, interpretive ability, but productive ability, across a huge range of, subject material. You want to watch video?
Yeah.
Oh, I've got 1 minute. This is my YouTube channel. What would you like to see an example of? I've got quite a bit. Would you like to see something from the beginning of the year rather than the end of the year? Would you like to see a basic video or a more advanced video? I've got levels 1 through 3.
I'll go with 1.
All right, level 1. What time of the year? Do you want to see what they can get to, or do you want to see where they start?
December.
December. All right. I'll try to find. Well, actually, it's got to be either right at the beginning, because I did like a couple videos at the beginning of the year, and then I picked up in like April.
Mm-hmm.
So at the beginning of the year. All right. What's a good one? I'm not going to do a one word image, because one word image is not nonfiction. Okay, this is day 2 of class. Oh, it's an hour.
Welcome to Spanish class. There we go. And just sit down. I think the camera.
tell you what, I'm gonna make an executive decision. I can't remember what those videos were about. Whereas at the end of the year, I started labeling them more specifically.
Topic of the day.
Okay, so here's a show and tell, which is
Books being class.
which was about a cake.
Today, y'all, we have a very good class. We have something that's very interesting. We're gonna do a lot of listening in the end of the that where we do a lot of listening. Monday morning. Keep in mind, thank you, Aaron. Do y'all 50%, please? I'm definitely, I brought my 50% today. We had a really interesting conversation. Please do y'all's 50%. Wow. Effective control.
Spontaneous production. I mean, nobody would say muy magnifico, but it's not wrong. Sorry, my Spanish is pretty bad.
Good job, that's okay.
Sorry.
Sí.
Oh, did I just disconnect it? Trying to get it closer to y'all. What did I do? Can you get unplugged? No, I pulled the cable a little bit to try to get it. Hey, here we go.
Okay, so cabeza. Sí, Sam. Casi por miren a Sam en los ojos. And she said, ¿quién? Sam, yo necesito más información. ¿Quién es el dragón? ¿De quién es el castillo? Castillo es bueno, es un castillo, ¿no? ¿Es obvio? Sí. Mañana.
Dude, fire my videographer.
Sam. Oh, hacemos. Gracias por la ayuda. Okay, so ¿quién hizo en el pasado? ¿Quién hizo? Este es un pastel.
So like, they didn't know the word for cake, but that's the whole point, to learn the word for cake and stuff. I don't really care that it was a cake. I could have brought anything in that was interesting.
Do they blurt? I didn't hear, not hearing blurting answers or blurting. Do they jump out in English or blurt
No.
in Spanish? Or?
No.
Es un pastel.
Every style of pedagogy requires behavior
en
management.
inglés.
Very similar.
Pastel. Sí, pastry. Es similar. Okay, el pastel. ¿Quién hizo el pastel? Correcto. Isaiah, mi esposa. Hizo el pastel. ¿Cómo se llama mi esposa? Luis.
I've already held y'all 5 minutes. You want to get out of here?
Thank you, Brett, for sharing all this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're welcome. Any questions? Or do you want to just like, I mean, it's 5:30. Do you want to just kind of like fade away if you don't have any questions and stick around if you have questions?
Yeah. Un aplauso para...
Oh, there we go. I think the big point, if I can leave you one thing, is I think there's 2 big points. First of all, a lot of people say that they can't teach with comprehensible input because they have to teach with thematic units. And you can't teach thematic units with invisible stories or targeted stories even, or it's more difficult at least. So, you know, you can. You just have to do different kinds of CI. And go into those super creative things, one-word images, invisibles, even story listening and stuff like that. It's a big jump from folks who have been doing a traditional practice for years, decades sometimes. You want me to make up a story about a boot? And that's supposed to be good for my students? What am I supposed to say to my parents if they say, what did you do in class? You know what I'm saying? Like, we all know that it works because it's about all the glue words, not the boot. But, you know, this stuff is great stuff. It sounds great to traditional teachers. It's just delivering it in a different way. So, hopefully we can get some more folks teaching their research-based methodologies.
Yay.
Thank y'all.
Thank you so much.